Hey, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Across the world on the interwebs and around the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning and welcome to the program. It is the Michael Dukes Show, broadcasting live. Hello and good morning. Wow, what a night last night. The wind, actually went to bed early last night, which is unusual for me. You usually find me very resistive to actually going to bed, although I know that I should. I know that I'm like, 5 hours is plenty of sleep. Nobody needs more than 5 hours of sleep. Anyway, last night I went to bed pretty darn early and woke me up. The wind, ooh, man, just howling through the Matsu. And now moving on, I guess, to other parts of the state as well. Still pretty windy here, but if for some reason the show goes dead today, just for no reason whatsoever, it's probably because the power's been knocked out somewhere here in the valley. There's been reports of outages all over the place with the trees blowing onto the power lines and everything else. So if I abruptly cut off, then no, I'm just kidding. But if I do abruptly cut off, it's probably what happened is probably a little windy and somebody knocked the power out or didn't pay the bill. One of the two. I'm not sure which. Probably the latter. I probably forgot to pay the bill. So anyway, good morning. It's Tuesday, a beautiful day, blue skies now, still a little breezy and windy here, but not nearly like it was last night. So I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you're enjoying the breezy day here as we get things rolling on. Tuesday also means, of course, that we're going to dive deep into the minutia of the state business and everything else. Today is Brad Keithley's day to come on board and share with us his thoughts on a multitude of topics for the weekly top three, including all the emergent legislative issues for 2023, which include, things like, education, teachers, local governments, all that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the North Slope's place in the evolving oil world, and finally, some good news on Willow. And so we will we'll have a whole bunch of discussions this morning on all that stuff. We might even talk about, well, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what we get into here this morning as we go forward. All right. So that's going to be Brad Keithley in hour one. In hour two, it's going to be our friend Chris Story, who is going to give us our weekly life coaching lesson. Now, Chris, we love it when he comes on board because he gives us kind of the whole, he makes me feel good. All right. This is really more about me than anything else because I need that weekly pick me up. I don't know about you. You might need it. You might feel like it, but I will tell you that that I definitely do. And so that segment's really more for you than me. If you benefit from it, then so much the better. But I definitely need that check-in. I love that. All right. So I guess can we dive right in? I suppose we could dive right into the headlines as to what's going on and what's happening around the state of Alaska. I want to see what you guys have to say. Oh, it was windy in Fairbanks, too. Somebody in the chat room just said they lost power. This windstorm must have been huge if it reached all the way from Fairbanks through Wasilla down onto the peninsula. This must have been a huge, huge thing. So anyway, you guys, I'm glad you're safe. I'm glad you're ready to go. Let's dive into some stuff here, shall we? And see what's going on. Let's see, we got notes from the campaign trail that we could talk about. So some of the endorsements and some of the other things that are coming out of this. And also some other campaign news. But first and foremost, I guess I should dive into this because we had an interesting discussion with Jody Taylor. Not Stephanie. Stephanie is somebody else. Jody Taylor the other day from the Alaska Policy Forum. And we were talking about the use of, or what she called dual enrollment, which was the use of correspondence funds to help fund private school. And they have been doing that apparently for a couple of years, is what it looked like. But there has been a new ruling out of the Attorney General's office. And I have a feeling that we're going to be duking this out over the next, in the near future. Let's put it that way. The Attorney General, the Office of the Attorney General, rather, has clarified the use of public funds now for private education. The use of public correspondence school funding allotments to pay for most or all of a student's private school tuition is, quote, almost certainly unconstitutional, unquote. This is from the AP, according to an opinion released yesterday by the Alaska Attorney General's office. Now, the opinion was issued by Deputy Attorney General Corey Mills due to the fact that Attorney General Treg Taylor had recused himself because his wife, Jody, had written about school choice and allotments in a post in May on the Alaska Policy Forum's website. And, of course, she was also on the program here a couple of weeks ago to talk about it with us as well. So she has been pretty vocal about what can be done with this matter, and Treg Taylor had to recuse himself. So Corey Mills issued the opinion and said that she finds it likely to be constitutional to use the allotments for discrete services or materials like private tutoring or some extracurricular activities, but unconstitutional to use it for private tuition in private schools. They did say that there will also be situations that fall into a gray area and that the state education department and school districts should consult legal counsel when such cases arise. The questions about these programs came up last year, as well as when Jody Taylor's piece came out, and around a recent Supreme Court decision. She said it's seen as important to issue a formal opinion on the program. She believes that the framers of the state's constitution were concerned with, quote, supplanting a public education with a private education that is different than supporting or supplementing a public education with the use of some private school resources. Now, the state's constitution says that no money, quote, shall be paid from public funds for the direct benefit of any religious or other private educational institution, unquote. And that, she said, makes it pretty clear. According to the opinion, correspondence schools are publicly funded and subject to state regulatory oversight. I see this, again, as being a bigger... I see this as being part of a bigger fight that's going to be coming. We're going to have to deal with issues, and if we're going to try and create this backpack funding that we talked about on the program here, that we've talked about in the past on the program, then we're going to have to find some way to make that work within the framework of the current Constitution, or it may be something that is brought up if we decide to have a constitutional convention, and maybe something that will have to be put into the Constitution at that point. But we're going to have to see. I mean, people should have a choice of how they want their children educated. They should not be relegated strictly to government schools with monies that are spent on their behalf. They should have some choice in that. And I think backpack funding, personally, is the way to go. So we'll be watching this debate, and maybe we'll have Jody Taylor back on the program here in the near future to discuss this. All right, endorsements. Who's got the endorsements? Well, let's see. Charlie Pierce had the announcement yesterday that Senator Laura Reinbold has now endorsed his ticket along with Edie Grunwald for governor and lieutenant governor. Also endorsing Mayor Pierce was Andy Kreiner from Kreiner's Diner, who had the big battle in Anchorage here most recently. So big endorsements for Charlie Pierce on that side of the world. Mike Shower got one of the most prized endorsements, according to Suzanne Downing over at Must Read. Mayor Dave Bronson has endorsed Mike Shower for Senate seat, well, was E, now O. And that is a prime endorsement for State Senator Mike Shower. Also from the state Republican Central Committee, there were some endorsements. Christopher Kirka failed to get an endorsement from the Republican Party and issued a scathing rebuke. I don't know if you saw this press release. It showed up in my email box, and it was a scathing rebuke from the Republican Party for not endorsing who is obviously the most conservative candidate in the world, or at least in the state of Alaska. And he did not receive that endorsement. But meanwhile, Joe Wright, a candidate for seat L, received the overwhelming endorsement for the party for Senate seat L. Ken McCarty and Kelly Merrick are also running for that seat. But McCarty did not receive the endorsement. Joe Wright did. And in fact, Representative Kelly Merrick received her second censure from the Alaska Republican Party, first as a House representative member, and now running as the Senate. She was censured yet again. Elijah Verhagen for State Senate in Fairbanks did receive the State Central Committee's endorsement. However, Click Bishop, the sitting incumbent, did not. Mia Costello got an endorsement in her seat and race against Matt Clayman. Tuckerman Babcock, running for Senate in the Kenai, was endorsed by the party. Meanwhile, Jesse Bjorkman, his Republican opponent, did not. And finally, Heath Smith of Homer was endorsed for Senate, but incumbent Gary Stevens was not. That's a pretty interesting list of people who were endorsed and not endorsed. Heath Smith, by the way, will be joining us on Thursday. We're going to get a chance to talk to Heath. He's going to be joining us in our he's going to be joining us in hour 2 of the program. Up there in hour 1, we're going to be talking with Benjamin Vincent, who is running against Louise Stute. So it's an all Kodiak day on Thursday. We'll have Benjamin Vincent in hour 1 and Heath Smith in hour 2. So running against Louise Stutes and Gary Stevens, respectively. So that should be a fun time. And finally, Governor Mike Dunleavy has decided to dodge the bullet. This was a post yesterday from Dunleavy's campaign. After consideration, we are respectfully declining to complete candidate surveys submitted by the Alaska Beacon and the Anchorage Daily News. While the questionnaires are helpful to the public for relatively unknown candidates, myself, Bill Walker, and Les Guerra have lengthy public records that every member of the media can reference in their coverage of the 22 elections. At the same time, we recognize the importance of providing access to reporters covering this race. We have offered interviews to reporters from the Beacon and the ADN in lieu of responses to their respective surveys. Members of the media who wish to schedule an interview with our team can submit their requests via email. What? Yeah, apparently we've decided that since we are politicians, we don't need to answer your surveys because you will run on our record. Okay, all right. Yeah, okay. I read that and I was like, what? What? So that's That's your headline roundup for right now. We got to go. The Michael Duke Show continues. Brad Keithley getting ready to kick things off here in just a moment. Common Sense, Liberty Based, Free Thinking Radio, and the weekly top 3. It's all dead ahead right here. We'll be back with more right after this.
Our light, our guide, and our trusted friend.
Michael Duke Show.
I mean, I read this, and the first thing I thought was, what? And I think Katie Rooks, who responds, she's one of the first to respond to this whole thing from the governor, says, "This is all I needed to know. Dodging real questions to answer real questions is hardly a new thing." That pretty much does it right there. That pretty much sums it up right there. So anyway, I had to chuckle when I read that whole thing. That pretty much sums up the whole deal right there. Let me go over here to see what you guys have got going on. We're still alive in Fairbanks. It's windy. Huge. It was huge in Fairbanks. Good morning. Schools don't exist except to provide a service to citizens, service to students who are also citizens. Good morning. In regard to the windstorm, not sure it's a tactically sound idea to emergency broadcast to every cell phone in Fairbanks that 911 is down and the purge has officially started. Oh, man. Republican Party is not supporting conservatives. This is not the first time, nor will it be the last. Yeah, I don't know if it's just his brand of conservatism that they don't like or what, but, I mean, interesting. I mean, the scorched earth policy, the letter that he sent out the next, I mean, it was, wow. Oof. Yeah. Anyway, we can get into that. Let me launch this here. Excuse me while I whip this out. No, go back. Good Lord. Now I did it. I broke it. There we go. Sorry, clicked the wrong button. You know how that is. It's what happens when you're a button clicker. Let me go back over here and launch this meeting and get things ready to go. Yes, launch the Zoom meeting. Has Kirka gotten any endorsements from the Republican Party? That would be negative, Ghost Rider. I do not believe so. I do not believe that he has, in fact, gotten any endorsements from the party at this time. All right. Let's see if this thing's actually working. It says it's connecting. Hey, look at that. Join with computer audio. Well, I'm seriously jealous wherever he's at. I can't hear him yet, but I'm seriously jealous. That's what the actual hell. It's super nice wherever you are right now. Let me, before we get too far along, let me turn you down just a little bit here. We'll get things started. Good morning, Bradley. How are you, my friend? How are things going?
Michael, I'm doing great today. I'm visiting my mother, and it's a nice day in Illinois, so I decided to do this outside.
Yeah, no, gorgeous out there. The humidity, not too bad, I'm assuming?
Humidity's up a little bit, but I've got a fan overhead, so I'm sort of shedding that off.
Only in Illinois could you have to put a fan outside overhead to stay cool, and it's ready to go. All right, so you are all ready to do this thing, huh?
I am.
Get the weekly top 3,
and you haven't been blown away, so
no. Although it woke me up I was sleeping. I had just fallen asleep, and I don't know, the windows in the house like rattled and the whole thing, and the house moaned, and I went, "What?"
And Terry checked first that it wasn't you snoring before she.
Yeah, exactly. Well, luckily, I mean, I went to bed early last night. I went to bed all by my lonesome, so it was quiet in the room. But all right, if you are all ready to go, any comment here on? We got 60 seconds. Any comment on Dunleavy's stealth campaign tactic there of just we're just not going to do your pitiful little peasant type questionnaires?
Walker later in the day announced the same thing, that he wasn't going to answer the Beacon questionnaire either. So it seems to be a thing now.
It's a trend. It's trending. Hashtag trending.
None of those former governors that have records want to answer questions.
Well, it's interesting to say the least that apparently they don't feel a need to be accountable to the folks out there, I guess, is the bottom line on that.
And the Beacon went through this whole process of developing the questions. I mean, they really crowdsourced the questions. So.
Yeah. All right, well, let's jump back into it. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like and share, like and follow. Let's get this going on. Here we go. All right, welcome back to the program. It is the Michael Duke Show, broadcasting live across the state of Alaska and on the internet as well. You can find us at michaeldukeshow.com, or you can join the simulcast, which is available over on Facebook or YouTube or Twitch or wherever. It's the weekly Top 3 Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets founder and director Brad Keithley joins us this morning to discuss this from an undisclosed secret location somewhere in Illinois where he's enjoying the outdoor weather. He joins us now. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Michael, I'm doing great today. It's good to be with you and good to be outside.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful. Beautiful. It's beautiful out here this morning. If I had the studio outside, I'd be fine, except for in January, it would not be so great. So it's okay.
Well, January here is a little cool.
Yeah, exactly. So. Well, let's, Brad, I want to talk about the weekly top 3. The first thing we're going to talk about is some of the emergent issues coming out of the, for the legislative races and what things that are going to be really hot button issues for the legislature in the upcoming session. But I did want to get your hot take, and you just gave us a little bit of it here on this kind of, I mean, I would almost say disdainful reaction from some of the campaigns on answering these questionnaires. I mean, the public wants to be informed. The public wants to know about certain things. And, the governor came out and basically said, no, I'm not going to answer you peasants. I'm not going to answer your questions. And then Walker came out, you said later, and did the same thing, basically saying that they weren't going to answer questionnaires. They said that they would do interviews in lieu of that. I mean, I don't know. They just don't want to go on written record? Or, what's your thoughts on this real quickly as we look at the emergent issues coming up?
Well, I think there's a couple of things about that. One, the Beacon had gone to great lengths to sort of crowdsource the questions and get input from readers and from those who are interested in these sorts of things to develop the questions. So it's not, the governor and Walker aren't just rejecting questions from that the editors of the Beacon came up with, or rejecting questions that frankly Alaskans came up with. And I find that a little bit troubling. The other thing is interviews, the governor has got this art down of not really answering questions during interviews. And he sort of slides around and goes on to different things. It's harder to do that in a questionnaire, and questionnaires tend to live on longer. Answers to questionnaires tend to live on longer. So I think the governor's concerned about, and Walker, frankly, are concerned about getting tied down with more specific answers than maybe they want to. So it's disappointing. I mean, I look at the questionnaires and I look at the answers, and I, gave a few ideas to the Beacon on what should be included in the questions, and a lot of others did as well. So
yeah,
it's
and it wasn't just
to see the answers to
yeah, it wasn't just the Beacon; it was the ADN one as well. So it wasn't like it was just a single outlet that they said no. They basically said nope, we're not answering any questionnaires. So it wasn't just the Beacon; it was a lot more. So. But like you said, I think part of it is that they just don't want any of that stuff on the more permanent record. Easy to spin stuff when it's like, oh, I misspoke or I did this. But when you write an answer out, it's forever. It's kind of clear there.
Well, and on a question in an interview, you can run the clock out, right? You can talk about sort of
right.
You want to for a while and run the clock out. On a questionnaire, it's really obvious when you're trying to ignore the question. So it's I think they're just trying to avoid being specific. And and it's not just the governor; it's Walker as well, who's announced that they're not going to respond to the questionnaire. So.
Right. All right. Well, let's dive into the emergent issues for the upcoming, not just the legislative races, but for the actual session. We've got a few here, mostly talking about education and teachers and local governments being financed by state government as well. Let's break that down.
Well, you can already see the fiscal questions or the funding questions starting to develop in the press. The Alaska Beacon, picked up by the public media and Alaska Public Media and others, had a headline that says, "Weeks from restarting, schools across Alaska are struggling to find teachers," and goes on and talks about the difficulties not only in the bush, but also in some of the urban areas in finding teachers. And then another headline says, "Almost 1 in 5 Alaska state jobs is vacant as agencies struggle to hire and retain employees." And then another headline is in connection with Dunleavy signing a bill to increase the power subsidy. When you dig down through the article, it says at the end, the endowment also funds the PCE endowment also funds community assistance grants and grants for renewable energy projects. Legislators were warned this spring that increasing spending on PCE may mean insufficient funds for those other programs. And then goes on with a quote from Nils Andreasen, the AML executive director, talking about how we're going to need to address this shortfall, what's now going to be called a shortfall in funds for local government as a result of increasing the PCE rates as a result of the last legislation. So you sort of start seeing this trend, right? You start seeing teachers are in trouble. We're having trouble retaining teachers. And when you get into the article, it starts talking about the lack of a retirement plan and how that puts Alaska at a disadvantage compared to other states in attracting and retaining teachers. And it talks about other issues as well, but the lack of a retirement plan is one of those. You get over to the 1 in 5 employees or 1 in 5 positions in state government are open. People were searching for state employees. And again, the article, when you get into the article, is talking about lack of compensation or non-competitive compensation and lack of a retirement with respect for current employees.
I want to be real clear on this. They have a retirement plan. It's just a Tier 4 defined contribution plan, and it's not the gold-plated defined benefits program, Tier 1 through 3, that we'd had in the past. And so they're saying, oh, well, now we don't have a retirement. That's bullcrap. You have a retirement plan. It's a defined contribution plan, just like most everybody else in the world has. Just because it's not gold-plated doesn't mean, that just pisses me off, I'll be honest with you.
Well, but they talk about it in terms of not being competitive with other states and the defined contribution plans that other or defined benefit plans that other states have. And then you get over to the article on the PCE and local government saying that the PCE is great. Glad we did that, but now we need more funding in here to cover our community grants and our renewable energy projects. So you can see this sort of drum roll picking up and starting to expand about things that people are going to argue we need to be doing in the next session. You can see candidates, Cliff Grove, for example, picked up on the lack of state employees or the open slots in state employees and on the teachers, and said, "Oh, we've got to address this." And Andy Josephson has talked about those issues as well as I'm sure other candidates have. So we're already seeing a building effort to try to pitch these things as we're going to need additional state funding as we come into to cover these deficiencies, cover these lack of competitiveness as we come into the next session. Now, I will say this: when I look at other states, they have some of the same issues. It's not as simple as Alaska is standing out as something.
It's not an outlier,
special.
right? It's not an outlier. Yeah.
having trouble attracting employees. It's happening in other states as well. And it's part of the phenomena that we're going through about tight labor markets in general. I mean, you see state employees moving to the private sector, or people in the private sector not moving to state employment, that back and forth that you normally see. You're seeing that in other states as well. Now, perhaps Alaska has a more, we've always had trouble with teachers. I mean, a big part of that is the remoteness, but perhaps Alaska is toward the edge. But this isn't a situation where Alaska is unique and standing alone, and other states are in an entirely different universe. It's a continuum across a number of states, if not all the states. So we shouldn't swallow hook, line, and sinker. Oh my gosh, we're not competitive. We're going to have to do these things to keep up with the Joneses. We need to look at this in a bigger context. Is there an issue going on with government in general? Is that a permanent issue, or is that a temporary issue? Is the function of the tight labor markets, as labor markets loosen up, are we going to see a swing back to the traditional job movement between government and the private sector, and the traditional ability of state government to attract? We shouldn't just swallow hook, line, and sinker. All of a sudden, Alaska's got specific problems, and we need to just throw a bunch of money at it to address those problems. We need to look at it in a much broader context, and we need to not run, as you and I often talk about on this show, we need to not run to the other side of the boat, and all of a sudden, get locked into a bunch of long-term retirement programs or increased compensation programs, if this is a situation that's going to work itself out in a couple of years.
Well, and I think we're also missing that this may be a great opportunity. I mean, if we have 1 in 5 state jobs are vacant and the state's still doing the job that needs to be done, we've talked a lot about shadow positions and things like that, vacant but funded positions. That's been going on in the state for years. I mean, at one point, Tammy Wilson had a count of over 2,000 jobs in the state that were funded but not filled, and hadn't been filled for quite some time. So we may have an opportunity here maybe to save some money and do some things like that by simply defunding a lot of these positions if the state's still getting the job done. I look at this, and I read this article, and I thought this is a lot of the sky is falling kind of stuff, as you said. And it's like a cry for what we really need is a defined benefits program. And that will, of course, attract everybody to us and, of course, lock us in for billions and billions of dollars in unfunded liabilities down the road in the future. I refuse to see it that way. I see this as an opportunity to cut into government and to make us more efficient by eliminating those positions that aren't filled at this point.
Well, it will be a debate topic, certainly, in the next legislature. Certainly those in the Southeast, Juneau and elsewhere down in the Southeast, up in Fairbanks around the university, and elsewhere where they have high government employment levels, they see it as a problem and will be pushing for, and they see money as the solution to the problem, and will be pushing for additional funding for those. I think you're right. I think the counter to that is looking at it as an opportunity for increased efficiencies. But it's certainly going to be an issue that comes up in the next legislative cycle, and candidates are certainly it'd be useful for voters to question their candidates about how they feel about those issues going in, because those are going to be issues that hit them right out of the gate when they get down to Juneau.
And of course, going back to the PCE and that discussion, I mean, this is the problem, where we've lost sight of what the PCE was originally supposed to be. It was supposed to be an endowment to help create infrastructure, not to create a subsidy farm for communities where they just continually pay it. I mean, we were supposed to build some infrastructure to make it cheaper for them, right? I mean, that was the whole point. And now we're using it for things that it probably was never really intended for to begin with, and we're crying about it.
We're seeing Lyman at work. So few years ago, PCE was building up a surplus, and Lyman and people were starting to talk about taking that surplus and using it for other things, or reducing the funding going to PCE. So what Lyman did was expand PCE to include these community assistance programs. And what that did was, bring on board another special interest to help support keeping PCE going. And we saw that when Dunleavy tried to defund PCE, we saw the community grant community come out to help.
They created a dependency, and then those people who were dependent came in. I mean, tell me that would never happen, Brad. They created a dependency, and now now they're defending it.
Right. So what's happened now is Lyman got an increase to the PCE as energy costs have gone up. Lyman's gotten an increase to the PCE payments, succeeded in doing that for the Bush. But the other side of that, now the community assistance side, having now tasted the expanded pot of money there for them, are now they're concerned that they're going to get squeezed out. So now they're going to push for more funding in it. This is Lyman at work. If you study how this is all developed, you can see how Lyman really has developed some of these pots of money and special interests that have gone on or been developed over time.
Give me a quick tease on number 2, and I guess number 3, because we can kind of do them together in the next segment. Give me a shot here.
So number 2 is there's a new Wood Mackenzie study. Wood Mackenzie is a great oil industry analyst, energy industry analyst. They've come out with a brand new study talking about the new super energy basins, not just oil basins anymore, but super energy basins, in analyzing where they think the oil industry is going and where they think there's going to be advantages in terms of attracting investment going forward. Alaska didn't do very well in that ranking, and we'll talk about that in the second segment.
Brad Keithley is our guest, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We're going to be back here in just a moment. We'll continue with him and have more discussions. Don't go anywhere. It is the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. The weekly top 3 continues right after these messages.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Brad, can you hear the bumper music when I play it? You can hear everything?
Yes.
Okay. I was just curious.
Did I run into it?
No, I was just curious if you could. I thought you could, but I'd never really confirmed with you that it was a technical issue, but it's good. All right. The entire labor market is dorked right now. The state is just using this opportunity to exploit, says Chris on Twitch. I mean, that's my point of this as well, because this is a problem that's nationwide, and the poor, pitiful me kind of poor mouth retirement thing. Obviously, it's a hot button thing for me because I've seen this for years, but that is the thing. We have no retirement. That's a bunch of poussoir. They've just got a retirement that they don't like. They want the gold-plated Tier 1. That's what they keep trying to bring back is the Tier 1 retirement, which is full defined benefits, which put us into the hole for $12 billion in unfunded liability before, if you'll recall. And so I just find this to be a whole lot of whining, I think is what the word that I'm looking at right now is whining. It is. It's going to be tough to be competitive, but that's what's going on these days for everybody. I mean, everybody is short. The labor market is in a hot mess. It is a hot mess from COVID. People rearranging their priorities. People some people just not even wanting to work in their fields anymore. I mean, it's a full on change.
Yep. If you watch the national numbers, unemployment or employment numbers are recovering in almost every sector throughout the nation, except for state and local employees. And there's been some people who have dug into those numbers, and it's, as I was trying to say during the main segment, the movement back and forth between the private sector and the state and local government sector isn't functioning right now. There's been an outflow from state and local government. I mean, a lot of people cite the stress of COVID and what state employees came under during COVID, and the work from home flexibility of a lot of private sector employees. And there's a bunch of other factors at work, but it's not working right now. And the question nationwide is whether it's broken permanently or it's going through a temporary issue. And the consensus seems to be that it's going through a temporary glitch as the employment market generally sort of works through the issues that it has. So I just what I would not want to see us do in Alaska, and I think you're exactly right, this may be an opportunity to look at the efficiencies of how we employ people in state government. But what we should not do is just run to the other side of the boat and say, oh my God, the sky is falling, we need to do all these things in Alaska, when in fact this is a nationwide phenomena that's going on. Alaska is part of that, and we need to consider, whether as people are considering nationwide, whether it's a temporary situation that we should not enter into long-term solutions for, substantially increasing the pay scale, substantially expanding retirement benefits, that we should not enter into long-term solutions for, because it's just going to be a temporary glitch that the market's going through.
Chris asks, he said, I would add the question, how does 10% inflation fit into all this? Because that's so, I mean, in your mind, I think it's a kind of a separate issue, but it is an exacerbator. I mean, it does cause even more problems on top of that, Brad.
Well, the private market seems to be responding faster. I mean, that's another reason that people cite. The private market seems to be responding faster to wage increases to account for inflation than state and local government does. I suspect we'll hear about that next session as the employee unions and employees generally argue for pay increases on the state side, on the government side. So it factors in that way. It may factor in other ways as well, but that's one factor that people have cited for this nationwide issue about state and local employees.
Of course, the irony of this whole situation is that state employees have been getting bumps and raises and COLAs and step increases for years, while the rest of the private market has been pretty much stagnant. So, but we'll forget about that. We'll say now that inflation's hit, we've got to get our piece of the pie too. It's the whole thing is infuriating.
Yeah, I just don't want us to feel. I just don't want to feel that this is an Alaska-centric problem that we need to solve by just starting to throw money at it. We need to look at this. We need to look at this in the bigger context. And candidates who say, "Oh my gosh, we got to just immediately start doing all this stuff. We got to do defined benefits. We've got to expand payroll," and don't talk about it as a national phenomena and a national issue. Candidates who don't understand that total context, I think, are candidates that you may want to be concerned about, because I don't think they're thinking about the bigger picture.
Brad Keithley is our guest, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Please like and share this video. Like and follow the show page. Let's get back into it and get things ready to rock and roll. Please don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell on YouTube as well. Still looking for 1,000 subscribers over there. Here we go. All right, we're continuing now. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top three. Number two, and number three, but number two specifically has to do with the new Woods-Mackenzie report and what Alaska, the North Slope's place is in the evolving oil world. Brad, give us some rundown here.
So the Wood-Mackenzie report, for those who are interested in the oil industry overall and where the oil industry is headed, the Wood-Mackenzie report is an excellent read from that standpoint. It's available on the Wood-Mackenzie website. Basically, what their thesis is the oil industry is evolving into not just oil super centers, super regions, but energy super regions. and they define that difference as an energy superregion having the ability to do two things in addition to just produce oil. One is to run that oil, energize, to run the machinery, the equipment, the operations to produce that oil with renewable energy, not using hydrocarbon energy to produce that, and reducing the emissions as a result from oil production as a result of that. The second is carbon capture and storage, having carbon capture and storage available so that you can take the carbon that's produced, generated in the course of hydrocarbon production, and stick that in the ground and reduce the emissions from oil production that way as well. And they define the new energy super centers, or the new energy super basins, as those that have not only oil production capability, but also have the ability to have renewable energy to run the operations, and CCS, carbon capture and storage, to be able to reduce the emissions and capture some of the carbon produced. This is the Wood Mackenzie report. Let me read just a little bit of it. Some of the traditional super basins are not well placed for a sustainable future. Their paucity of renewables and limited CCS potential will cause investment to fall and the corporate landscape to shrink, especially under the 1.5 degree increase scenario. Larger disadvantage basin examples include West Siberia, most other Russian basins, Venezuela, Alaska, and parts of Central Asia. Here, the high cost of renewables and or limited access to these technologies are the main problems. Disadvantaged basins face a flight of capital and a product that is harder to sell as consumers increasingly shun high carbon options. The leading international oil companies will be among the first investors to leave. Think about BP leaving Prudhoe. Some national oil companies and private firms with less onerous emissions targets, think Hillcorp, may be happy to pick up any opportunities left behind, but the writing is on the wall. All companies must eventually back away from higher carbon resources. Here's the next piece to keep in mind. Host governments may try a range of different incentives in a bid to stem the tide. Fiscal terms, regulation, and policy must all work to optimize the integration of upstream CCS and renewables as far as possible. But unless governments can address the underlying issues, they will face growing political and social resistance to any attempts to prolong the life of high carbon basins. So I think what this is telling us is, what it's clearly telling us by mentioning Alaska and the Alaska North Slope, is that we've got a challenge up on the North Slope as the oil industry evolves to focus on these other opportunities, these super basins that have the ability of not only producing oil, but producing it with much lower carbon emissions through the use of renewables to energize their activities, and through the use of CCS to get away with or to put away the hydrocarbon production or the carbon production. As the oil industry evolves in that direction, investment will go in that direction, and investment will flee the regions that don't have that potential. The Alaska North Slope has historically been found, or had a reputation as being a fairly low carbon emissions operation. But what Wood Mackenzie is pointing out is other regions that are higher carbon emissions regions that have ranked behind ANS or Alaska North Slope in that are focusing on using renewables to generate their energy for the fields, and on CCS to be able to reduce their emissions footprint. And while Alaska is fairly low now relative to the others, as the others use renewables and CCS to lower their carbon footprint, Alaska will sort of bounce up to the higher end of the spectrum,
right?
And not be viewed as being attractive for investment as a result of that.
And we don't have CCS on the North Slope right now. It's not something that's built into those plans up there.
We can't recapture natural gas and reinject it into the basins, but we don't have just pure carbon injection up there. There's been a lot of talk about the Cook Inlet having great CCS potential, having great geologic structures to be able to do carbon capture and sequestration. But as we know, the Cook Inlet's a long way away from the Alaska North Slope, and to be able to take advantage of that, you'd have to run a carbon pipeline down from the slope down to the Cook Inlet to be able to take advantage of that. So we have, as I say, we re-inject natural gas. We don't have natural gas flaring problems like they do elsewhere, for example, Permian and the Williston basins. But we don't capture, we don't have the ability, or we haven't developed the ability to have major carbon capture beyond that.
Just under 3 minutes now. We can tackle into number 3, which is some good news on Willow, if you can give it to us quickly here.
Yep, absolutely. So we've talked about the Willow project, Conoco's Willow project. The challenge has been the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management. The courts bounced back the environmental impact statement, said that BLM had to do an additional study. BLM came up with the additional study. They came up with this new alternative. And what we talked about, I think, on the last segment or the segment before that, was whether that alternative was going to be attractive that BLM came up with to meet the court's direction, whether that was going to be attractive enough to Conoco to continue the investment. Good news, Conoco's recently came out with an announcement that said this is Conoco speaking, the new alternative E developed by BLM and cooperating agencies responds to the Alaska District Court order and presents a good path forward, Conoco's words, good path forward for the Willow project. So the concern about whether or not the BLM sort of reining in the alternative that had been approved in the last round, reining that in with alternative E, whether that was going to produce an economic project. The good news seems to be that Conoco is signaling that they're comfortable with that. And generally speaking, we haven't seen the terms and conditions and the limitations that the BLM may put on it, but generally speaking, it seems that we're still headed in the right direction with the Willow project. That's good news, because Willow is one of the 2 big projects up there that we need to see go forward.
Final minute here, Brad. I'll let you summate on everything and anything else you got on your mind here, real quick.
Well, I think that combining 2 and 3, I think near term, it looks like Willow's going forward. So near term, that project is going forward. Pica, I continue to be concerned about. We still haven't seen the financing for Pica. And long term, I think the Wood Mackenzie report says that Alaska is going to continue to face challenges long term, and we may see the oil industry, like the teachers and others, coming in and saying, "Oh my gosh, we're going to be challenged. We're going to need some different financial terms here." So we're not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination. Willow's good news. Pica, if we can find some funding, will be good news. But longer term, we're still in a challenged environment.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you coming on board and joining us. We'll look forward to talking to you again next week.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
Folks, we're out of time for this hour. If you got to go, be kind, love one another, live well. Otherwise, hour 2 dead ahead. Chris Story, our guest, The Michael Duke Show. Brad Keithley, final thoughts here on this. I don't think the oil companies are struggling. I think the oil companies are looking for any help that they can get. I mean, these are for-profit entities, and anything they can do to make their facilities or their developments more profitable makes sense to them. And this is just another reason why they can now come to you and say, "Hey, we need a little bit more. We need better deals. If we're going to stick around, we need better deals." Am I reading this right, Brad?
You're reading it right, Michael. And I think we're going to, what Alaska needs to ask, if we're approached again about needing
better terms,
better terms,
yeah.
needing better fiscal terms, we need to be talking about investment. Can you guarantee us? I mean, if we even think about that, can you guarantee long-term investment? Because it may be that, aside from Willow and Pica, we're entering into harvest mode here, which is the gradual decline down as Alaska fails to attract additional investment, and the gradual fall in Alaska production. We may be entering that. If we are, that's one thing to think about in terms of fiscal terms. If we're going to, if we're in decline, maybe the fiscal terms need to change to allow the state to have more of what's being taken in of the revenue. But if we start talking about, as the as the Wood Mackenzie study suggests, if in these challenged basins, the producers start talking about host governments trying to make life easier, trying to extend the life of the fields, that's going to need to be a hard discussion about show us the money, show us the investment, show us that you're willing to step up and sort of, run counter to what Wood Mackenzie's saying, that you're willing to make the investment in perhaps developing renewables to the extent they can be on the slope, engaging in CCS, finding CCS opportunities to the extent we can on the slope. Show us that you're willing to make Alaska one of these super energy basins, one of the surviving energy basins, before we start talking about, or as we start talking about additional fiscal terms.
I think that's, I think that's important to understand, that we can't just be like, oh, let us bend over backwards for you, oil industry, because again, you've been utilizing us as a land bank for years. We have been a stable, geopolitically stable, bastion for them for many, many years. And just to look to them and go, well, what have you done for us lately? We need, if we even consider new fiscal terms, we definitely need some concessions that say, okay, well, that you're going to invest in us here, or there will be ramifications for what you're doing. Well,
and it's not, if they're going into harvest mode, that means there's not investment. That means there's not additional development going on. They're just going to ride out the revenue. And frankly, regions that are in harvest mode, governments that have regions that are in harvest mode, they frankly ramp up the share of revenue that they take, because you don't need to maintain fiscal terms that attract additional investment if you've gone into harvest mode. So what Wood Mackenzie is telling us is we're coming up on a discussion. And I think Alaska needs to understand that we're coming up on that discussion. And I think we need to think about what kind of discussion that's going to be. If we want to survive, if we want to, continue to be a player in terms of one of the surviving energy super basins, if we need to, change things, then we need to make sure that the industry is making the investment necessary for us to be one of those survivors as an energy super basin.
What are you looking at here coming up here, Brad? What do you keep an eye on? Is this election time? Are you watching the candidates? What's going on here? We got about 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, I wrote a piece in the Landmine. My piece last week in the Landmine was the most important fiscal issue that candidates ought to be talking about, and it talks about how they're going to pay, that we're going to go back into deficits. If you look at the 10-year plan, if you look at the effects of declining oil prices, as the future markets tell us we're going to have declining oil prices, as you look at the impact of inflation on spending levels, we're going to go back into deficits in a few years. And the question is, what are candidates saying about how they're going to deal with those deficits? Not only in terms of the big picture things, but who's going to pay? How are they going to pay for those deficits if they want to maintain government? Is it going to be through additional PFD cuts? Is it going to be through more equitable taxes, more equitable revenue measures? And what I'm really looking at over the course of the campaigns is what people are saying about that issue. And I'm really trying to dig in to understand how candidates are addressing that issue.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Well, it's going to be an interesting campaign season. We've had some new candidates here in the last few days. In fact, this week is pretty full of new candidates. I think we have an opportunity here, Brad, to see a full change in the legislature coming forward. I think that there's a lot of frustration with some of the previous incumbencies, and I think that this is a good opportunity for us to do it. Some good challengers all the way across the board. So we'll see if we can change out some of the players, and if we can do that, maybe we can, one, find efficiencies like we talked about in number one with some of these things in state government, and maybe we don't have to look at new revenues in the long run. But we do have to pull the state spending under control if we have any hope of not having to generate new revenues or take a PFD or anything else.
Well, Michael, it's going to be a challenge. I mean, it's going to be a challenge to not have to address revenues going forward. When you look at where the oil futures market tells us oil prices are going. When you look at the production curve, when you look at spending levels, I mean, we went through this in 2019. We say that we want to cut spending, but when we get up to the crunch point, people don't back up that mantra. So,
all right, Brad. Thank you so much for coming on board, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, folks. We're up against it. Hour 2 dead ahead. The Michael Dukes Show.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Around the world on the internet and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. It is the Michael Dukes Show. Hello and good morning, my friends. How are you? Are you ready to face this beautiful, beautiful day? Huge windstorms across the state last night. Some people have been without power and are just getting back online. I made the cautionary statement earlier that if for some reason I just go off the air, that it's probably because the wind done knocked out the power here at the old radio ranch. But it is another beautiful day. I see nothing but blue skies outside, and we are ready to rock and roll. We just finished up with Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, talking about the weekly top 3, a good discussion and a deep dive into the big issues facing the legislature and oil and gas news coming up here in the near future. So we look forward to having further discussions on this as well. Let's see what else do I got going on here this morning? Well, I suppose we can talk a little bit here about some of the electoral stuff, notes from the trail, so to speak, and other endorsements and things that have come forward. We'll revisit that a little bit. And then coming up in the second segment of the show this morning, Chris Story will be joining us for our weekly Uplift, our life coaching lesson, which is, as I said earlier, more for me than for any of you. I need that every week I need it to make sure that I'm that my head is right. My head is right. That is for sure. It's gonna be coming up with Chris Story. Also this week we've got a lot of things going on. Tomorrow on the program, Mike Shower will be joining us for hour 2, working on another guest for the earlier part of the show tomorrow. Mike Shower will be in hour 2, and on Thursday we'll be joined by Benjamin Vincent, who is running against Louise Stutz, and Heath Smith, who is running against Gary Stevens. So very much a Kodiak-centric show tomorrow with the candidates from those areas coming in to talk with us about their runs against the incumbents, and it should be a pretty good show. Hopefully, I'm trying to pack as much in here as I can before we get to the primaries. Now, generally speaking, for a lot of the legislative races, the primaries don't really mean anything at this point. In fact, for 58 of the 59 races, the primary means literally nothing because every candidate is going to progress into the general election with ranked choice voting. But we'll have some discussions on that, and at least we'll get some of the information ahead and early, and we'll be ready to dive into this. All right, so hour 2 here, and we're going to get into the discussions about the candidates and who's endorsing who and who's got the nod and all that kind of stuff. I find it really interesting to see who's getting the nods and who is not. The big news that came down yesterday was that Senator Laura Reinbold has now endorsed Charlie Pierce for governor as a strong conservative candidate, and she's announced her endorsement for the Pierce and Grunwald ticket for governor, as well as Andy Kreiner, who is the owner of Kreiner's Diner. You'll remember them. They were the ones that were battling it out with Mayor Berkowitz over the shutdowns of the businesses during the COVID pandemic. And so a couple good conservative voices that I think will get some well-deserved name recognition for Charlie Pierce in the upcoming election. And I hope it's enough to get them squared away on this. Other endorsements came around as well. State Senator Mike Shower now being endorsed by Mayor Dave Bronson, another iconoclast, conservative out there. Mike Shower also received the endorsement of the Alaska Republican Party's State Central Committee on the meeting on Saturday. And so a lot of endorsements flying around here over the last couple of weeks. And finally, also coming out of the State Central Committee were some other endorsements and a censure. Joe Wright, who is a candidate for Senate Seat L, received the party's overwhelming endorsement. Now, that was the seat that was vacated by Laura Reinbold. And so Joe Wright has received that endorsement. Representative Ken McCarty, and Representative Kelly Merrick, neither one of those received the endorsement for that seat. And in fact, Representative Merrick was again censured by the Alaska Republican Party for caucusing with the democratically controlled majority in the House. She's now running for Senate, but for the second time in just the past year, her behavior has cost her the support of the party, who voted heavily in favor of her censure. The first time that they voted for censure was last year when she was in the House. Elijah Verhagen received the endorsement for State Senate in Fairbanks for I think it's Senate Seat R now, which was Senate Seat B. The incumbent Click Bishop did not receive an endorsement at all. Party endorsed Mia Costello of Anchorage, who's facing off against Democrat Matt Clayman. And then Tuckerman Babcock, running for the Senate in the Kenai, was endorsed by the party. But his Republican opponent, Jesse Bjorkman, was not. And finally, Heath Smith of Homer was endorsed for the Senate, but the incumbent, Gary Stevens, was not. Heath Smith, again, is going to be joining us on the program on Thursday to talk about his run for the state Senate. And I'm pleased to say that it seemed like most of the good old boys club that are there in the legislature has got some serious competition. The only one that doesn't seem to be facing a real strong candidate is Bert Stedman. Mike Sheldon is his opponent, and I like a lot of Mike's ideas, but I don't think that he has the he's a perennial candidate, and I think that's problematic to begin with. Like I said, I like Mike, and I like a lot of his positions, but as a perennial candidate, it makes it difficult to try and fight against the business-as-usual crowd. But every other major player in what we would consider to be the good old boys club, the Gary Stevenses, the Click Bishops of the world, the Luis Stutzers, they are facing some challengers, and I think that is and I think that's a good thing. I think good, solid challengers, and I would love to see it. I would love to see some support for Sheldon down there in the Sitka area as well. I wish he had a little bit more of a organized machine behind him, so to speak, in those ways. It would be a good thing to do. One of the ones that did not get the thumbs up, so to speak, the endorsement of the of the State Central Committee for the Republican Party was gubernatorial candidate Christopher Kirka, who had petitioned for that. He's running to the right of the governor, and he requested the endorsement through his supporters. He was not able to get that endorsement, and then put out a scathing letter shortly after this came out yesterday, dropped into my mailbox, and from the Kirka party. And it says, gubernatorial candidate Christopher Kirk called out the Republican State Central Committee today for rigging the process against non-establishment candidates. Although, I mean, I think that is directly opposite of it, because they didn't endorse Stevens. They didn't endorse Kelly Merrick. They didn't endorse Click Bishop. I mean, there's a lot of business as usual good old boys that did not get the endorsement. But he said rigging the process against non-establishment candidates after a vote over the weekend to deny him the official party endorsement. Sarah Palin was right, Kirka said. The Republican Party leadership really is a good old boys club. The process is rigged. The message from the Alaska Republican Party is clear. Conservatives need not apply. He says, there's no question in my mind why this decision was made. I was deemed too conservative and therefore a threat to the establishment's alliances with favored special interests, big government Republicans and the crony capitalist cabal who run the state. I don't pass their impurity test. They don't want a governor who actually intends to enact conservative policy, hold legislators accountable, fight the globalist agenda, and represent this people in the state. I mean, No, I mean, I really think, quite honestly, that this has to do more with personalities than with anything else. The kind of the scorched earth policy that Kirka and some of his allies have taken in people that he doesn't agree with or don't agree with him is I think part of the problem. I think that there are plenty of conservatives who are being endorsed. But I think that again, I think it has to do more with not what you say, but how you say it kind of thing, right? This comes back to the whole FACL thing and all that kind of stuff that we're seeing out there. But yeah, I don't think that it's not surprising to me. I guess I'll put it that way. But again, the kind of the scorched earth policy, I mean, is even represented in this press release that came out, that this is how they feel about it. If somebody doesn't agree with you, it's a personal attack on you and on everything you stand for, that we should burn the world down over it. But again, I guess not that surprising. I don't know why I was surprised when I read the email and thought, oof, I don't think anybody likes the negativity in that regard, and that's the thing. But anyway, that is kind of the roundup from the legislative session and from all the things that are going on out there. We'll see what happened. All right, we're coming up on the break right now. We might as well just get ready to go. Chris Story is coming up, the man from Homer. He's going to give us our weekly life coaching lesson here in just a bit, and then we'll probably follow up in the final segment of the show today with a few phone calls from you guys to see what. So if you've got questions, we'll put answers out there on the phone lines here later on in the program. This hour of the show being brought to you by your friends over there at Satellite West. You can find more about them at satellitewest.com for all your satellite communications needs and, satellite, cellular, VHF, whatever it is, any kind of communicative stuff. Those are the folks that you need to talk to. Again, go to satellitewest.com to talk with them. All right, we got more coming up. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll be back with more right after this. Chris Story, our guest.
broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Yeah, I mean, nothing in that vote had anything to do with the fact that he didn't vote for the full PFD, right? Oh, but it was a huge budget. It was the whole... Okay, all right, whatever. I'm just, had nothing to do with the fact that he voted against a full PFD. That could have nothing to do with it. Just throw that out there. Just throw that out there. What do you got going on? What do you got going on? All right. I mean, what are you going to do at that point? What are you going to do? Let me get this all set up here. I'll get Chris Story. Get ready for some story time. Story time with Chris Story. We'll see if we get him all squared away. Okay. Got it? Got it. We are all ready right now. We are all ready. Okay. Whew. If Kirkman and Eastman didn't kill the PFD, it would be over $5,000 per person. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think that is something that's probably honestly going to come back to haunt them in the long run. I think that vote will have deeper impacts than what they expected. That's my take on it as we go through. I think it has everything to do with the budget vote. He wouldn't provide cover for the rhinos. It is sad that other conservatives did. Provide cover. People wanted a full PFD. There was an opportunity there for a full PFD. And it would have been the first time, and it would have set a precedent. And I think it would have been good, Chris. I don't know about providing cover for rhinos. But, he made his vote, and he'll have to live with it. I think that will be the bottom line. He made his vote, he made his position, and he'll have to live with that, and we'll see what comes down with that. The vote wasn't even close, said David. The vote was not even close on that. The vote on Heath Smith was really close. I thought for a moment he wasn't going to get the endorsement. David said, yeah, we censured her as a party for the third time total. I thought it was just the second time, but apparently it was the third time. If you're going to talk about revenue, then let's talk. Don't end at oil. I know Jerica is talking about agriculture, wanting to talk about agriculture and food security. It's one of the things that we should be focusing on, I would agree with, especially as we look at what's going on across the nation. Times are tight. I don't know if you saw I just looked at the headlines today on Drudge. I didn't actually read the stories, but there's a whole bunch of stories talking about, that, we're looking at a fiscal crisis. We're looking at some fiscal crises and having a more sustainable food supply, especially out here at the end of the logistical chain, would make a lot of sense. So it's something that we should be working on. All right. Chris Story, the man from Homer, I believe, is ready to join us this morning. Hello, sir. How are you?
I don't know about ready, but I'm here, Michael.
You ready, willing, and able, or just willing?
A little bit like sitting next to the exit row. Yeah, I'm able.
I'm able. Am I willing to crack that door open and leap off the wing of a plane? Probably not.
I'm the first one out.
Yeah, I'm the first one. That's why Chris sits there. Forget about the handicapped kid next to me. I'm going out first. What's our topic today, Chris?
2 questions that might change your life.
2 questions that might change our life. All right, we're ready to go. We're ready to do it. All right, so 2 questions that might change our life. Chris Story, our guest. Let's get back into it. Here we go. common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Please like and share this show, and like and follow the show page. Let's get it going on. Chris Story, our guest, and let's kick it off. Here we go. All right, continuing now, our weekly guest who comes on for my benefit, not necessarily for yours. If you benefit out of it, then that's just a fringe. I mean, right, I do this because I need to have these conversations with Chris Story every week. I need my life coaching. It's what keeps me sane. It's what keeps me even throughout here. Chris Story, the man from Homer, the realtor, the writer, the potter, a little bit of everything. He is a Renaissance man par excellence. He comes on today to ask us 2 questions that could possibly change our lives. Chris Story, good morning, my friend.
Good morning, Michael. What a glorious day here on top of the world. How are you?
Not too bad. Did you guys get some wind down there last night, or was it kind of calm?
It was decent. We got a little bit of wind yesterday. I was watching Cooper and Reagan. They just jumped off the deck and were doing some business out on the lawn, and all of a sudden a gust of wind came up, and Cooper, he's a King Charles Cavalier Spaniel, which is when God said, "Let there be dog." That's the breed he meant, and we finally got it right. But anyway, he's just watching, and one of the rocking chairs on the deck just started rocking like, the big guy was sitting in it, only nobody was there, and he just watched it rock and blow over. And he just kind of looked at it. And anyway, it's really interesting. It's like, what an interesting, insightful dog.
Yes, your dog is super intelligent. We get it,
Thank you for acknowledging that, Michael.
King Charles Cavalier Spaniel. It's, only for rich people in the Techno Geek herd. All right. So 2 questions, Chris. You're going to hit us with 2 questions today that could cause us to change our lives, or could change our lives for the better. Just what do we got here going on?
I think by asking these 2 questions, you will, asking and answering, of course, it presupposes you're going to answer them when you ask a question of yourself. And so I believe that these 2 questions will, I said might change your life. I think they will change your life, of course, pending your answer. But before I ask those 2 questions or share them with you, I want to share a story. I interviewed an author the other day by the name of John Leake, and he co-authored a book called The Courage to Face COVID-19. He co-authored it with Dr. Peter McCullough, who's infamous in the fight against death and hospitalization since 2020. And early treatment has been his focus, and repurposed drugs, and it's cost him his career in a lot of ways. But he's found another career. He's found a career in communications and becoming a broadcaster and somebody who can put information into the world that's useful. So at the end of this interview with John Leake, who's a fabulous communicator himself, and was able to help Dr. McCullough take his message and put it into a story and style that's just incredibly easy to consume and understand. I asked John, I said, John, what can the average person, and we're talking in respect to the idea that early treatment was suppressed, that there's been early treatment available since March of 2020 relative to fighting COVID. And I said, what can the average person do? And he answered that question this way that really impressed me. He said, well, I'm an average person and I wrote a book. And so we think of authors and published authors and people that are in the public eye as being something other than average. And the truth is, he answered that question really honestly. He's not. He's nothing more than a guy who puts one sentence down and then chooses a way to end that sentence and start the next. And he did so and published this book with Dr. McCullough because he wanted to make a difference. And so here's the 2 questions that I think will change your life if you ask and answer them in this order. What can you do? And then the powerful companion question to that is, are you doing it? So with respect to your health, what can you do? Are you doing it? With respect to your finances, your economy, the economy. I just started a book that is actually going to keep me up at night. It's called A Banquet of Consequences. And I'm convinced that in this book, we're going to find out exactly what led up to the 2008 financial global crisis and what led up to then the financial crisis following COVID-19 that's on its way. But the idea is, when I consume that information, Michael, what can I do about it? And will I do something? What can I do? And will I do it? Those are the two most powerful questions you can ask right now on any subject in your life at your disposal.
I wonder if the number one malady in human nature, the number one malady is inaction. Because we get a lot of stuff, we get a lot of information. I mean, today in the information age, we're inundated with info. And I was just laughing the other day because I was thinking about, being a kid and wondering about, certain things like somebody says something when, somebody weighs such and such, somebody weighs 10 stone or something. And I'm like, how much is a stone? How, what's the actual weight equivalent? And I used to think, and I was thinking about that the other day because it came up and I was like, I can look that up on my phone real quick. And I thought, wait a second, when I was a kid, I would have had to have gone down and tracked down a encyclopedia or gone to the library or something. We are inundated with information. We've got a lot of information, but what we are saturated with, I think a lot of times, is inaction. And whether that's through fear or analysis or I don't know what it is, but you're right. What can we do, and are we doing it? The problem is a lot of us know what we should be doing. We should be exercising. We should be eating healthy. We should be, getting enough sleep. We should be reading things that improve our brain. But are we doing it? Is it easier to do something else? And I'd be the first to say that, I know I should be exercising more and being healthier, but I'm tired. I've got things and I'm busy. And, inaction, I think, is a big part of it. So it's an important part of your question. That second question, are you doing it, is what's really striking home to me this second.
I agree with you. Acknowledging, this is something I can do, cuts through the overwhelm. And we do have information overwhelm. It's right at our fingertips. We had a dinner party the other night and somebody mentioned Shaquille O'Neal and his commercial and there was something came up about how tall he was, and there was a debate between three of us. Is he 7 foot or closer to 8 foot? And it's like instantly that argument is settled with a quick Google search, and you find out he's 7'1". And so all of this, that's superfluous, completely innocuous information, but it's all there. There's no reason not to know something. It's right at your fingertips. But the question is, what are you here to do? There's something you're here to do. And whether you're talking to somebody who's 8, 28, 88, 98, there's something you're here to do. I watched a speaker the other day that literally moved me to tears. And I thought, this individual didn't ask to be in this position. He didn't ask for this accident to take away his mobility. He didn't ask to be a public speaker and somebody who would provide motivation to those that are fully able and yet may not be doing anything or doing what it is they're here to do. And this person from his wheelchair, just as I said, moved me to absolute tears and inspired me to say, wait a minute, okay, what am I here to do? And am I doing it? I think each of us was born on purpose and with a purpose. And part of the journey, part of the great piece of life, and one of the hopefully you don't ever put that last piece of the puzzle together, that you're constantly searching, constantly on a journey of discovering what it is you're here to do at this stage of life. Maybe you've retired from one aspect of your life or a career, and you've moved into this stage. You're not done. You're not fully baked. You're still here to do something. What can you do, and are you doing it? About the financial collapse that we're witnessing, it's like a slow-moving train wreck with this inflation and the $6 trillion that we've just printed out of magical thinking and is indebted upon our great-grandchildren at this point, and added to the 30-some-odd trillion that we already owed, using air quotes, to whom nobody really knows, and will it ever be paid back? It's not designed to be paid back. What can I do about it? And before you know it, you go into a sense of overwhelm. Okay, what can you do? I've made a goal and a commitment, Michael, to help 1,000 people in the next 24 months become millionaires. 1,000 people becoming millionaires through what I do, which is to talk about real estate ownership and widen your own portfolio and your footprint in your community. And that's what I can do. And the question is, am I doing it? Yes, I'm working on it. It's something I talk about. It's something I think about. I write about it, podcast about it. It's something that's within my control. I can't fix the economy, but I can help you fix your economy and your future and your destiny and help you secure your own achievements and solid foundation on which to stand.
So how do we decide? I mean, again, two questions. What are you here to do, and are you doing it? How do we decide what it is that we're here to do? I mean, what is the process in your mind?
I think that journey of self-discovery can often be mistaken as navel-gazing. Some people are critical of those that are into self-improvement or self-discovery. But I think stopping and just listening, I think you already know the answer to that question in your own heart, in your mind. And if you don't, then I suggest just simply giving and beginning to give wherever you can. Pick a charity, pick a cause, pick somebody that could use some help. Find a way to give something, because you've extrapolated out of life a great deal of knowledge, wisdom in some area where others are still struggling. Some people would love to be able to even step onto the ladder of which you've already climbed to the top. And so look around. Who can you help and who can you serve and become a mentor to? This is one of the greatest gifts we can give is the gift of leaving a legacy, leaving your thumbprint on somebody. I've told the story 1,000 times. The first guy that handed me a book on real estate changed my life simply by handing me the book. And then here's what he said. He said that if you read this, it'll be equivalent to a 4-year degree in real estate. So I took that to heart. He didn't have to say it. He didn't have to make that mark on me. He could have just walked into the hardware store and left, but he didn't, and he made a difference. And so what are you here to do? What can you do? And are you doing it? And in between those two questions, one might even find that you're a little bit afraid, you're a little bit scared, or you don't want to leave that comfort zone, or what if I'm not smart enough? What if I get rejected? Blah, blah. All of these kinds of what if questions might come up in a little bit like flak over the target. The more uncomfortable you get as you come to an answer might be your answer. It might be, this is your target. This is where you're supposed to be, especially if it makes you uncomfortable.
So you're not giving me much of an out here, Story. You're saying you already know what you're called for. You already know what it is in your heart of hearts. You just may not want to. I mean, is it that you just don't want to look at it? You just don't want to. And again, I agree with you. I think it is fear. I think it's the fear of failure. I think it's the fear of, if this is truly what my calling is, but I don't do a good job at it, then again, I think if I just ignore it, then I can never fail at it. And so you're not giving me much of an out here.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely not. And I don't give myself one either. And I constantly hold myself to my own standard of, am I living up to what it is that I say I'm here to do? And I believe, and I have for almost 20 years, that I'm supposed to be of service, serving and motivating, inspiring, and helping people to accomplish what it is they want. So I call it Zig's Law. Zig Ziglar said, you can have whatever you want in life if you'll help enough other people get what they want. Well, I read that about 20 some odd years ago. And then 20 years ago, took it to heart and said, yeah, that is what I'm here to do. I am here to help other people get what they want, be it through sales, which I think is a high noble calling, or writing, which is another form of sales, or speaking, or podcasting and broadcasting, all of which I look at as helping somebody, you, get what you want in life, because you deserve it. And you deserve to live as an eagle versus a chicken. You deserve to have what you want, no matter how little or much that is. And that's what I feel like I'm here to help in that journey.
Chris Story, ilovehomeralaska.com is where you find him and his writings, his books, and more. Chris, let's summate here. 2 questions. What are you supposed to do in life, and are you doing it? How do people jumpstart this? Give me the give me the shortcut. How do we get from one to the other? How do we pick that out in your mind?
Sure, they're a little bit like what do you call those witching rods or the dowsing rods that somebody's looking for water, and
Right,
start
right.
to cross and vibrate at a certain point over the water. I believe that some people are able to do that and have that sensitivity within themselves. And I think each of us, you and I, each have this ability to say, what can I do? And am I willing to do it, even if it costs me something, time, energy, emotion, vulnerability? Ask that question and repetitively ask it. What can I do about what it is that's making you most afraid right now, or angry even, for example? And you might find, well, what can I do? I could run for office. I could write opinions. I could write op-eds. I could call my legislator. I could call my representatives. I can do something. I can go help that person. Fentanyl is crossing the border like crazy and killing people. What can you do about it? I don't know. Ask that question of yourself. Is there something you can do? Can you help with the opioid crisis, the homeless crisis, financial crisis? And if you have some ability to do something about what it is that makes you most upset right now, are you doing it, and are you willing to do it?
All right. Well, we've got our marching orders now, and again, very little wiggle room left from Chris Story on that. You've got. I mean, he's calling it like he sees it. So the questions we should be asking ourselves are: one is, what are we meant to do? What are we here for? What is our calling? And two, are we doing it? And that could be incremental, right? Are we moving forward to that goal? We don't have to, like, somebody says, my goal is, my calling is to engage people and inspire people in public speaking. Doesn't mean you stop down to the street corner and drop a soapbox down and stand up on it and start going. It could be incremental moves to that, right?
Absolutely. Or you could do that. And by the way, public speaking can be to a party of one. Doesn't have to be to thousands. Usually you think of broadcasting and public speaking as one to many. It could be one to one, and just beginning to engage in that conversation publicly, privately, even with just one person. Get started.
Okay. Chris Story, author of the book, The Backyard Millionaire, and author of the Making of Man series, and author of Born to Live, and author of the brand new podcast, the Backyard Millionaire podcast, and available every Tuesday and Thursday on the stations of KPEN down on the peninsula with his show, which is you deal with both realty and with positivity, right?
Yes, sir. On Top of the World Radio.
Okay. All right. Chris Story, again, ilovehomeralaska.com is his website. Thanks, my friend. I appreciate you coming in. As always,
my pleasure.
Much needed dose of positivity for me. I needed that. More than anybody else, I needed that. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll be back with more. We're going to open up the phone lines. Powered by our friends at Satellite West, 907-433-3150, 907-433-3150. The Michael Duke Show continues after these messages.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes on Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
All right. In the break right now, and Chris is gone, so he's not going to stick around with us. He's like in and out like a duck mating. Just gone out of it. All right. You guys got awful quiet. Awful quiet. Daniel says, at least with exercise, the easiest motivation is to make yourself a priority for 60 to 90 minutes a day and make that 60 to 90 minutes non-negotiable. I mean, I hear what you're saying, Daniel. I hear what you're saying. But I'll be honest with you, it is hard. It is hard. If I have one struggle, well, I have more than one struggle, but if I had one real struggle with that, it is that time. Time for me is precious, and I work a lot. I work a lot, and so by the end of the day, I'm pretty pooped. I'm tired. But you're right. I mean, I know I need to do it. And intellectually, I know I need to do it. Intellectually, I know I should take some time. I should do those things. And it's not popped for me. So what Chris is giving me is, it's important. Are you doing it? No. Should you be? Yes. Okay. All right. Oh, I don't know. Maybe I need to take time out of the middle of the day to go do it. Maybe that would make it easier. I don't know. I sometimes it sucks, he says, not going to lie, but you have to learn to love the process. Yeah. I hear that. I understand. That's what a lot of people say, when they're walking or they're running or they're doing some kind of exercise, they learn to love it. I have never experienced that even when I was working out on a weekly basis or daily basis, working out every week, I never said, boy, I really love this. It was always like, oof, this is a hard one. This is a hard one. But yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I'm not letting you off easy. I own a gym. I'm going to hound you now, says Daniel. And it's not like it's anything really easy. It's not like I was out there throwing weights or anything. I was just thinking like, I need to get out there and walk a mile a day or do something like that. And it was just like, it's the time that's overwhelming for me. It's the time. I mean, I work 13 hours a day, 14 hours a day sometimes. And so I'm like, I just want to sit down and relax a little bit and not think about anything else and have a little dinner and then go to bed. But maybe I need to readjust my priorities. I'll be the first to admit it, that readjusting my priorities is probably not a bad thing. Get a horse, clean up after it, and feeding it will give you 60 minutes of cardio every day. Oh, great. That's really what I need, is a horse. I'm already feeding a bunch of children and everything else. That's not something that I need. I don't need a horse to do that. I'll get into it and we'll go from there. As I park at my trainer's house, I couldn't walk last week, so there's that, says Angie. I remember getting up a few days like that where I couldn't hardly walk, let alone anything else. I did CrossFit for a while, which was, it was nice because it was just down the street from my house and I'd get up every morning and do it. But, oof, man, some of that stuff. Yikes. Fitbit counts grooming as cardio. Grooming a horse as cardio. The horses are a lot of work. I love horses, but they are a ton of work, that's for sure. Horses are easier than kids. Well, okay. All right. What an investment, though. Man. Talk about garbage in, garbage out. That's groceries in and groceries out is what that is for horses as well as for kids. Well, sunshine, blue sky. It's all I see outside in the little slit in my blinds here. Sunshine and blue sky. It's going to be a beautiful day. And as my grandfather used to say, every day above ground is a good day. So we'll be enjoying it. No complaints. What are you meant to do, and are you doing it? Well, I guess it's something that we should all be thinking about. What are you meant to do? What are you meant to do, and are you doing it? I hope so. I hope so. 20 seconds out right now. So like and share, like and follow the show page. Do all the YouTube-y things if you're out on YouTube. Make sure that you get things squared away out there. Help support the show. Let's dive back into it. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Here we go. Okay. Well, one final segment of the show today. And in the end, we like to talk to you, of course, because we can. So let's open up the phone lines, powered by our friends over there at Satellite West. You can find them at satellitewest.com. 907-433-3150. 907-433-3150. We'd love to hear from you. Please sound off this morning and give us your thoughts on anything that we've talked about today, or, I mean, anything else that we may that you may have on your mind. We're just talking with the chat room, but they're not letting me off the hook. I was saying, I know I should exercise more, right? I know I should exercise more, but it's the time thing, and it's time. You're tired. I got all the excuses in the world. I got all the excuses in the world that you could ask for. I've got those excuses down pat, but I know that I should, in fact, at least go walking every day or something. Have you heard about this thing called Conqueror's Challenge? I was looking at it the other day, and it's a virtual challenge for walking at your own pace, scenic views, walking with others, that kind of stuff. I thought about doing that because there's a little bit of accountability baked into that whole deal. And I thought that would be an interesting thing, and I'm considering that. It's you do it and you get medal challenges and you get medals back, and anyway, it's a pretty cool little deal. But it has to do, of course, with walking, and they've even got a Lord of the Rings thing where you can like do the Shire and follow Sam and Frodo's path. It's a 145-mile route and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, it's an interesting thought. Somebody just said trap shooting is good exercise. It is. It's true. Trap shooting is pretty good exercise as much as you do it. You'd have to shoot a lot of ammunition to get like serious exercise out of it. But, it's a good question. Good question. All right. I'm not the only one, says Tony. Door knocking on campaigns could be exercise. We could turn exercise into anything, right? You have to commit to it. I've been thinking about what Chris said. Knowing what you're supposed to be here doing, and are you doing it? I think I know what I'm supposed to be doing, and I think that I'm doing it in regards to trying to share and shape and my community and work with it and inform and educate and enlighten my community through the broadcast and radio and everything. But at the same time, there's other things in my life that I should be doing too as well that I neglect as well. Moving your jaw all day is exercise. Well, I get plenty of exercise. I probably got the strongest jaw muscles you've never ever seen from talking all day, but it needs to be more than that. It needs to be holistic, I think. And I think that's something that we need to work on. All right, phone lines are open right now. 433-3150, 433-3150. If you would like to sound off, we'd love to hear from you. Coming up on tomorrow's program, we will be joined by State Senator Mike Shower for our Shower Hour of Power. And we'll talk with him in hour 2. Working on guests for hour 1. We'll figure out who that is going to be. Don't know yet. I've got some invites and some requests out, but we'll see who will join us in hour 1. On Thursday's program, already got Thursday all filled up. Benjamin Vincent, who is running from Kodiak, he's running in the State House against Louise Stutz. He's going to be joining us. And then in hour 2 from Homer, Heath Smith will be joining us. He is the newly endorsed candidate for the Senate district down there and he will be running against Gary Stevens, and he's going to be an hour too. So kind of the Southern Peninsula Kodiak focused show tomorrow as well. So that'll be coming on here, and we'll be talking about that here tomorrow. Tires are tiring work. I have busted tires. I have done that. I have busted tires, mounted and balanced, and swapped tires. I've done all that kind of work. And you're right. There's a lot of work based in on that. There's a lot of different things you could do to turn it into exercise. You don't just have to be, a blacksmith or something like that to get all your exercise in one day. Although blacksmithing is definitely also another thing that is very labor intensive and time consuming. I guess it's harder for those of us who are stuck in like office type jobs to find ways to exit. I mean, I could be just clenching right now. I could just be doing isometric exercises in my chair while I'm on the radio, or I could be doing that at my desk at the radio station or whatever. I could be doing isometric exercises for it, or I could get one of those standing desks that everybody stands all day and walks around. I don't know. Always trying to find another excuse why I couldn't do what I could do. I could just get out and walk a half an hour a day around the neighborhood, and at the end of the day or the middle of the day or whatever, and do all those things. Got to find a way to overcome those. Got to find a way to overcome those baked in objections or excuses, I guess, for yourself. All right. Well, I'm human, and I'm working on it. How about that? I'm human and I'm working on it. Don't expect me to be perfect. So. All right. That's pretty much. I got a forge, not working on an anvil. Swinging a 3 to 5 pound hammer sounds fun. I love to watch those shows. I love to watch the videos of the people making cool, stuff on, in the flamin' forge kind of thing. But again, it's almost like you'd rather watch it than participate in it. I get almost as much enjoyment ever watching it as you go through. Or hauling salmon up a cliff at Chittenden. Again, you guys are coming up with all these great workouts where it might be just as simple and easy for me to get out of the chair and walk down the street for a few miles and then walk back. That would probably be just as much exercise without having to do and own boats and get things and do a forge and oh well. Chris has got me all kind of stymied and kerfluffled today because he didn't give me any wiggle room. That's the thing. It's like it's put up or shut up kind of thing. So I guess I got to put up. I guess I got to stand up and do it. Well, we'll do it. I guess I'll commit to you. Today I'll do my walk and I'll report back to you tomorrow if I did my walk. If I didn't, you guys can lambaste me. How about that? I will go out and walk today. All right, well, we're out of time. Be kind to one another. Love one another. Live well. Find your purpose and do something on your purpose today. That's what we need to do. Find what you need. Find what you're called here to do and go do something on it today. I've done my part for today. We'll see what you do for tomorrow. How about that? Mike Shower, our guest then. Have a great day, my friend. We will see you tomorrow. Well, I mean, I lost in 2014, I lost 180 pounds. That's a whole person, by the way. And I've kept most of it off. I'm feeling pretty good still overall. I mean, not where I want to be, but I just know that we need to be healthier. We need to be mobile. The key to being mobile into your elderly years is staying mobile your whole life. So I'm working on that. But yeah, I lost a bunch of weight back in 2013, 2014. So I know exactly what you mean there, Barbara. All right, friends. Well, that's the end of the show today. I'm done. I got stuff to do. I got to go walk. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day. Enjoy yourself. Be kind. Love one another. Live well.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.
Well,
Goodbye.